all of those kinds of things. So that's kind of February's month. But actually February 7th, which is today, through February 14th is actually Congenital Heart Defect Week. And this is something that's really near and dear to me, and so I just wanted to share a little bit about this. This morning when I was getting dressed, before I got in the shower, it was on all over Facebook to wear red today for heart disease and congenital heart defects and just kind of all of those heart issues. And so when I got done with showering and getting my closet, I found this was the only red shirt I even own, which is kind of shocking for someone that this is like a big deal. So evidently I need to invest in more red. But I wanted to talk to you about my experience with heart disease and specifically with congenital heart defects. So just to give you guys a couple quick facts, because I think so much we talk about heart conditions and we lump them all together, and there's very little talked about and known about congenital heart defects. So a congenital heart defect is when a child is born with a heart condition. So it's not something that you develop as an adult or later in life. When you have a congenital heart defect, that means you're born with that problem. There is no cure for CHD, congenital heart defects. You're born with it, and then you have surgery or things to take care of it, to manage it. But really the cause is unknown. Some people say that it can be a genetic thing. Sometimes it's just a mutation in your genes, but it is just unknown, and there's not a lot of research that goes into congenital heart defects. So I did, before I had my son, which I'm going to talk about, I really didn't know a lot about congenital heart defects, which is also really interesting because I have a nephew who has a similar condition to my son, but yeah, I still didn't know much about it. But congenital heart defects are the #1 birth defect associated with death in children. So that's kind of an amazing thing, that the #1 killer of kids is these heart conditions, and yet we don't know much about them. So that is really interesting. In fact, there are 60 times more, congenital heart defects are 60 times more prevalent than if you combined all of the childhood cancers and you put them all together. 60% more kids are born with a congenital heart defect. And yet the funding for childhood cancer is 5 times more than congenital heart defects. Like, that's incredible. So in the US, approximately every 15 minutes, a child is born with a congenital heart defect. That is a lot. So that's about 40,000 babies born every year have a congenital heart defect, and that's about 1 in 100. I had no idea it was that much until I had a child of my own with a congenital heart defect. And there are more than 40 different types of congenital heart defects. So the one that my son has is totally different than the one that my nephew has, and I'll tell you about both of them. But the one that my son has is actually quite rare. So even in this area, we have Primary Children's Medical Center down in Salt Lake City, which they are one of the best hospitals for this kind of thing. And they hadn't seen Henry's condition in years. I think it had been like 10 plus years. So there are a lot of different conditions, and I think that's part of the reason why it's such a huge thing, that it's hard to fund it, and the research is hard, and there's just a lot that goes into congenital heart defects. So this is really interesting. In the 1960s, if you were born with a congenital heart defect, your chances of making it to an adult was only about 20%. So a lot of those children died. And in fact, I had an uncle, my dad's brother, was born with a 3-chamber heart, and he was considered a blue baby. This was in the 40s, and he died. I want to say he was like 6 weeks old, but he was in that percentage. Only 20% made it to adults. It just was, they didn't know how to treat it. They didn't know how to do surgeries. They didn't know how to do all of that. So I feel really lucky that we've moved past that. Today, kids born with a congenital heart defect, 90% of them now will see it to adulthood. So that's a huge improvement. So we went from 20% in the 60s to currently we're at 90% that those children will make it to adulthood. And knock on wood, it just keeps getting better because I'm super emotional when it comes to this. So I wanted to show you guys a picture and tell you a little bit. We'll show you a couple pictures. So I have 4 children, and I had twins, and my twins are my youngest. And when I had my twins, I'm going to show you a picture of when they were born. This is my twins. So this is Henry, and this is Amelia. So they're boy-girl twins, and the entire time during my pregnancy, I had ultrasounds probably once or twice a week for at least the last half of my pregnancy, and I gave birth to them almost 37 weeks. So they were very far along. They both weighed exactly 5 pounds, 10 ounces. So they were good-sized babies, but never in any of my ultrasounds was there ever anything detected that there was something wrong with either one of my babies. Amelia was born completely healthy, no problems, but Henry was born with a heart condition. But nothing was ever found or detected during his pregnancy or during my pregnancy with him. So after he was born, the night after I had him, our pediatrician came in and did their check to make sure they were okay and found that he had a heart murmur. Well, he thought it was a heart murmur. So he said, in the morning, we're going to do more tests and we're just going to make sure everything is okay. So, I knew something was going on. They came in and talked to me and told me something is really serious. We need to take Henry down to primary children's. So long story short, I was really grateful I had twins because my husband and Henry left and went to the other hospital, and I was stuck because I had to have a C-section. So I was stuck at the hospital, but I still had Amelia with me. So it was pretty amazing. They were born on February 1st, which is kind of cool because February is congenital heart defect month, and it's kind of a whole month where we talk about heart conditions and everything, so I thought that was kind of cool. But then on February 7th, which is today, 8 years ago, Henry had his first open heart surgery. So this is my little guy, if you can see him. This is right after his surgery, and there's a big bandage on his chest. Henry was diagnosed with a condition, called double inlet left ventricle. So essentially what that means is he was born without a right ventricle. So both of his atriums fed into one large left ventricle. So that meant that his blood was not circulating through his body correctly, and that his arterial blood and his venous blood was being mixed in together into one ventricle and then pumped out. So things were just not working well. So he had open heart surgery February when he was just a week old. And then he had open heart surgery again in July of that year when he was 5 months old. And then he had surgery again when he was about 3.5. So he's had open heart surgery 3 times. So currently Henry has a 2-chamber heart. He has one large atrium and one large ventricle, and they've replumbed everything. His heart condition is a little bit more than just that. His heart also is backwards, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, his heart is amazing. This is Henry today. Isn't he cute? I just love my little guy. But he is a survivor. He is amazing. He's healthy, he's strong, but every day I'm grateful for him. So very quickly, my plea to everyone is don't just appreciate your children. I had no idea what a blessing it was to have a healthy baby born. I think so many times we take it for granted that this baby was born and they're healthy. I'm so grateful for modern medicine that can keep my child alive. This is an amazing month that we get to celebrate not only just heart disease, but also congenital heart defects and become more educated. I think the most important thing when you're pregnant is to make sure that all of those boxes are being checked and that they're doing a thorough job checking, because the congenital heart defects are a silent killer. Kids that don't get treated and don't get surgery will die, and so they need to be caught. So if you are able to, donate to a local hospital or a foundation that specifically deals with congenital heart defects, because it is severely underfunded and they need help. But I hope you guys have learned something. I hope that you've been inspired to love your children a little bit more and hug them today. If anyone has any questions regarding any congenital heart defects, or if you know someone that has a congenital heart defect and they want to talk to someone. So Henry has double inlet left ventricle, and my sister, her son, has hypoplastic left ventricle, which are both 3-chamber heart conditions, but they're different. But if you need someone to talk to, please reach out to me, or I can also steer you to my sister, who also would be happy to talk to you. But together we can raise awareness, and together we can help save the lives of many children. So thank you, and I'll see you later. Bye.